all for joining me this afternoon. My name is John Gary with MyBuys, and I'm going to share a few thoughts around the idea of knowing every consumer. We'll look at trends that are driving this approach to marketing, both from the customer perspective and the retailer perspective. We'll share a combination of primary research and aggregate data, and we'll highlight steps that you can take to know every one of your consumers. And then finally, we'll look at a MyBuys client and see what this marketing approach means to them. So real quickly, here's the backstory on MyBuys. We've been around since 2006. We focus on e-commerce and have had dramatic growth in the number of clients year over year. This e-commerce footprint is comforting to know that you're not our guinea pig, but it also plays two critical operational roles that we'll get to later in the webinar. So let's start with research. Forrester identified three key trends that are driving e-commerce. The first is mobile. The second is Amazon, that's the 800-pound gorilla. And the third is the shift in purchase behavior to online from other channels. This second paragraph highlights the challenge with mobile, and that is that shoppers aren't just on mobile. We see a lot of browse on mobile, buy on PC. Shoppers are not on one or the other, they're active on both. Knowing every consumer may sound revolutionary, but as a strategy, it's in the wild already. First, Amazon's like the Death Star to other retailers, in part because of their drive to know every single consumer that comes to their site. They're relentless, they're technologically sophisticated, and will take as much of your business as they possibly can. Second, this approach to marketing works fundamentally because customers like it. They don't really care whether it's you or Amazon that puts them at the center of your marketing efforts, but they do like it when they're at the center. When retailers apply the principle of knowing every consumer, it's often first as a defensive strategy against Amazon. However, it's not just a defensive strategy, it's a growth strategy. The results are real, quantifiable, and significant. Now, Amazon is aggressively using technology to know each one of their shoppers as an explicit part of their strategy. They're coming after you both in your digital and your offline channels. I'll show you research results that 2/3 of the time when buyers abandon carts, their very next step is to search for the very same products on Amazon. Or do a Google search, and you know that the first results on Google take you to Amazon. So there's a real risk that you're doing the marketing work for Amazon, that shoppers visit your site, take advantage of your expertise, your product knowledge, and then go over to the dark side. And that's just online showrooming. Brick and mortar retailers see it too. Shoppers come in, find their sizes and colors, and then go buy from Amazon. The response is to be even more customer focused than Amazon, having such a direct, relevant conversation with each consumer that they don't even think about showrooming and then buying from Amazon. So we've used the phrase know every consumer about 150 times so far. What am I talking about? This strategy means marketing to consumers as unique individuals and putting each individual at the center of your marketing as that consumer prepares to make initial and then repeat purchases. For this marketing approach to be effective, retailers need to find and engage consumers wherever they are, regardless of the device that they're using, and be thoughtful about the consumer buying cycle over time. So we talk about four main pillars for knowing every consumer. First, it's a personal conversation with each consumer that is relevant from their perspective, not just yours. Second is that each consumer chooses their touch point at that moment. You have to be where they are, not the other way around. The third is that you have to align with where the shopper is in their buying cycle. And then lastly, it's technology and automation that makes all of this possible in the first place. So one byproduct of knowing every consumer is extreme segmentation. Thinking about your shopper as part of a segment with 10,000 other shoppers keeps the focus on the marketer, not the consumer. The flip side is we all know segmentation works, and segmenting to each shopper or extreme segmentation is the holy grail. So let's shift gears for a minute and see how customers feel when you put them first. I mentioned this research at the very beginning. MyBuys and the e-tailing group do a study every year to understand consumer reactions and perceptions. The study that I'm pulling this data from is called, quote, How Multi-Channel Personalization Impacts Shopper Attitudes and Buying Behavior, end quote. It focused on learning more about why consumers purchase and don't purchase, what consumers do next when they don't purchase, consumer opinion of online personalization of their shopping experience, and consumer willingness to share data to personalize their shopping experience. So in this study, 40% of all consumers stated that they buy more from retailers who personalize the shopping experience across channels. Not just one channel, but across channels. Nearly 60% of consumers indicate that they find it to be easier and more valuable to deal with retailers who engage in one-to-one conversations with them across channels. 75% of consumers indicated a desire or a willingness to receive one-to-one communications from retailers that they shopped at. And I skipped over one of the data points here. The one that I skipped is that 59.5% of consumers who abandon say they go to Amazon next. 42.1% do a Google search, and the first search results are often links to products on Amazon. So retailers spend a lot of time, effort, and money attracting consumers to their websites. Yet over 97% of these consumers abandon without making a purchase. There are a lot of reasons for why consumers don't purchase, but the main reason why consumers abandon retailer sites is because they're still in the research phase. 44% of consumers in the study listed this as the main reason that they abandoned. 35% stated the on-site search was lacking, making it difficult to find what they were looking for. And 33% of consumers reported that they will abandon without purchasing because it is difficult to find the products that they're most interested in. In order to get a consumer to convert, it requires smart, relevant, personalized communications based on each consumer's individual current interests and needs. Consumers stated that they see value in personalized marketing messages, and they also welcome them. Personalized email has been very successful in making the shopping experience more individualized and more engaging for consumers after visiting a retailer's website. Almost 3 out of 4 consumers reported that they prefer personal email alerts from a retailer after a site visit or a purchase. Consumers are also willing to receive multiple messages from retailers. When retailers personalize the shopping experience for consumers, consumers say that it is more permissible to be contacted. When you create a specific message for me, I welcome it. When you create a message for a segment of thousands, I'm much less interested. So customers love this idea. Where do you, as a retailer, start to treat each customer as an individual and not a part of a segment of 5,000? Retailers need to build with a holistic strategy and employ cross-channel personalization techniques across all touch points to first cost-effectively acquire consumers that are most likely to purchase from you, to then ensure that the highest percentage of consumers coming to your site are converting into customers, and then finally to reactivate past customers to drive repeat purchases and re-engaging customers who haven't purchased in a while, all to maximize that lifetime value. So to accomplish these 3 objectives, you need to first have everything personalized. You need to be able to recognize the same consumer across all of their devices. You need consistent data, coordinated campaigns, unified reporting, and holistic management. For your online shopper, this means coordinating display advertising, email, and the online store across not just a full PC site experience, but also coordinating all of these across mobile in a way that's seamless for your shopper. One of the highest barriers to knowing every consumer is internal silos of data. The email team doesn't see data from the online store. Behavior in the store doesn't inform display ads. Shoppers on mobile appear as completely separate individuals when they're really a multi-device shopper. Putting the customer first means bridging the silos, sharing data, and recognizing that the shopper might be the same shopper, just on a different device. Knowing every consumer sounds all warm and fuzzy. It also makes great business sense. When you advertise to a single shopper, not a segment, the results are phenomenal. If you think in terms of return on ad spend, especially if you're just breaking even on new customer acquisition, the numbers here look pretty good. Likewise with email, when you send only to the individual and only when there's something relevant to say from the recipient's perspective, the results go through the roof. And making the customer the center of your store drives similar results. This is especially true when you're able to recognize me on my phone and me on my PC as being the same me, just on a different device. So mobile is the huge question mark. There's a big upswing in traffic. I talk with retailers that are seeing over half of their traffic on mobile. And what they're not seeing are conversions on mobile. And the mistake is to think about a phone shopper and a PC shopper as being separate people. I'm the same person with the same interests on my phone as I am on my PC. If you can't see me, if you see just a phone or a PC or a tablet and don't know it's all me, you can't put me at the center of your marketing activities. So here's a quick analogy. My wife comes from a huge family. My mother-in-law once told my wife that she was her favorite. Now, it turns out that she told each one of her kids that they were her favorite, and they all believed it, not just because their mom told them, but because their mom treated each one like they were the favorite. None of them would believe they were her favorite if she didn't know who they were. Only recognizing me when I come to your site on my PC is like only recognizing your kids when they come in through the front door and not knowing who they are when they come in through the garage door. If my mother-in-law only recognized her kids when they came in through the front door, they would never have believed that they were her favorite. If you can't recognize your shoppers across their devices, they'll never feel like they're your favorite shopper. This on-the-device critical infrastructure. So finally, let's take a look at what pieces of this strategy are working for retailers now. MyBuy serves hundreds of retailers on over 1,000 sites. Analysis of transactional data over the last couple of years shows that knowing every consumer drives a 50% lift in conversion rates. Retailers that are engaging with consumers as individuals see these consumers coming back again and again, tripling purchase frequency. And you'll see this last data point again in another slide or two, and that is that when you know your consumers across more than just one touch point, when you treat them like you know them, they buy 5 times as much. Knowing every consumer also means digging into your catalog and figuring out what the shopper wants at this particular moment. Remember the research slides that told us that a third of consumers abandon because it's hard to find the products they're interested in, and almost half of shoppers abandon because they're still in the research phase? As this data here shows, it's not the top 20 or the best sellers that shoppers are looking for. I talk to retailers all the time that have a core set of products that they focus on and don't pay a lot of attention to the rest of their catalog. And that's the same as saying that you don't mind if your shopper gets a product from you, your competitor, or Amazon. The virtuous cycle of more new customers and more repeat purchases means that shoppers buy everything that they can from you and not Amazon. But first, They have to be able to find what they're looking for, and your ability to show them what they're interested in, what they're looking for, shows them that you know them, that you recognize them. Some retailers have expressed concern about overdoing it. If I use an abandoned site email and retarget and show products on my site that the shopper browsed on their mobile, am I trying too hard? Will my shoppers think I'm stalking them? Well, the data doesn't tell us what shoppers think, but it does tell us how they respond. When your shoppers engage with you across 3 channels instead of 1, it's a 5x improvement than if just through 1 channel. I want to shift gears again here. We've laid out a very comprehensive, holistic strategy that we've seen work time and time again. But like all strategies, you don't just wave a magic wand and have it implemented all at once. Often it's a crawl, walk, run approach, but always with the strategic goal in mind. That approach applies here too. We think about 3 big buckets of touch points that I showed you already: display ads, email, and on-site. So let's look at staging this approach within each one of these buckets. The first big bucket is display ads, and we have the 3 customer lifecycle stages. You'll get the biggest bang for your buck by focusing on conversion first. This slide is all about display ads, so the focus at this stage is on retargeting. There's also a healthy contribution from the email side of retargeting, and those are abandoned site and abandoned cart alerts. And I'll talk about this again when we get to the email bucket. New customer acquisition is the second play because there's a ramp-up period. It starts out slowly and builds as we learn more about what makes a good customer for you. And then finally, we can use display ads to reactivate those shoppers that haven't bought from you in 3, 5, or 8 months, or that have stopped responding to your emails. The second big bucket is email, and the first thing to do here is to supplement your existing email efforts with extreme segmentation. Segmentation of 1, and only send when it's relevant to that individual recipient. The second thing is to supplement retargeting with abandoned site and abandoned cart emails that I showed on the previous slide. You remember the slide that showed that more engagement with personalized touch points means more sales? This is what we mean. Not relying on just one vehicle, email or ads, but running both in a coordinated fashion drives better results than just one or the other. The third one here is a tweak to your existing programs that will drive a jump in your current open, click-through, and conversion rates by making your newsletters and promotions feel less like a blast to everyone and more like a segment of 1. All of this email is a supplement to, not a replacement for, all of the great email work that you're already doing now. Finally, here are a number of pages on your site where you can show each consumer that you know who they are. The best performance comes from product detail pages, order confirmation pages, and category pages. And omni-device means that the intelligence from my browse behavior on my phone fuels the personalization that I see on these pages when I visit on my PC. My browse behavior on my PC feeds the retargeting ads that I see on my phone. My email shows up wherever I read email, and across all of these touch points, you create an experience just for me without me ever logging in or raising my hand to identify myself. The data speaks very clearly that this strategy works, and really telling the customer that you don't want any more of their business. You're fine if they buy somewhere else. This is not an all or nothing approach. It can be staged over time, but it is important to start with the end in mind. In the time that we have left, I'd like to show you a real-world example of a MyBuy's client that has followed this crawl, walk, run path to knowing every one of their consumers and what it means to them. So I've talked about the strategy. Now let's look at the tactical solutions that enable the strategy. Iowa 80 is a joint Dingley Press MyBuys client and has agreed to let us share their experience back. So we'll use them as an example of engaging with shoppers through ads, email, and in the e-commerce store. Part of Iowa 80's approach to crawl, walk, run was forced on them. When they first got started with us, we only had the ability to engage with shoppers through the online store and through email. So that's what Iowa 80 implemented. As we expanded our capabilities, Iowa 80 turned them on. All of the MyBuys modules that Iowa 80 implemented are driven off of a single IT project, a single implementation. So Iowa 80 didn't have to keep going back to their IT folks. They did have to approve creative, but there was no additional coding or feed requirements beyond that initial implementation. The first module that Iowa 80 turned up is what we now call MySite Recommendations. These are dynamic, they're updated with every click, and reflect cross-device shopping. If I've never been to Iowa 80 before, I'll see top sellers. But as soon as I start to click around, the recommendations get more and more personalized. Now, if I browse Iowa 80 on my phone, then come back later on my PC, the products that get recommended to me as soon as I hit the home page include data from what I did on my phone. Every click from every device that I use gets stored and used to figure out what I'm most likely to buy on this page right now. Here's an example of recommendations on a product detail page, which is the highest converting page type personalization. And the result of knowing every shopper for Iowa 80 has been a lift in conversion rates and a lift in traffic. The second module that Iowa 80 turned on was shopper alerts. These are personalized for each recipient and only sent when there's something relevant for the shopper. It's a supplement to Iowa 80's existing email program, and in any one week might go out to 10 or 15% of the total email list. These alerts are very effective at driving second, third, and fourth purchases. 1 in 3 shoppers that opens one of these emails will then click through to the site. A significant chunk of the people that buy through these alerts turn out to be first-time buyers, so people who've gone partway through the cart, or people who've signed up for a newsletter, or we have an email address for them that haven't purchased yet. These alerts are very effective at driving a first-time purchase. Iowa 80 added cart abandonment and site abandonment alerts. These alerts do not require a shopper to enter an email address in the session or to log in. As long as the shoppers opted in to receive Iowa 80 emails, MyBuys automatically recognizes them on their PC, their phone, their tablet, and can send an abandonment alert. These abandonment alerts have over a 50% open rate, and just under 60% of the people that open return to the site. It's hard to show the difference between the 3 flavors of display ads, but you can see a few things here. Ads are often a carousel of products selected for the individual shopper that's seeing the ad. Even if you and I both get retargeted after visiting Iowa 80, we're not going to see the same products in our ad. The ads have search capabilities and the ability to capture email signups directly in the ad. Finally, these ads work across devices. So if I shop on my phone and then come home and check up on the Detroit Tigers on the PC in my basement, Iowa 80 can retarget me on my home PC based on my site visit on my phone earlier in the day. As Iowa 80 transitioned with us to our latest iteration of display ads, they saw a huge leap in the number of impressions that they were able to serve, in part because of this cross-device capability. We have way better visibility into where those shoppers went because we could see them regardless of the device that they used. Impressions are great, but the goal isn't to show more ads. It's to generate more orders. In this same time period, the orders through ads doubled. All of this works for Iowa 80 because it works for the people that shop and buy from Iowa 80. MyBuys gives Iowa 80 the ability to know every consumer and to make every shopper feel like they're Iowa 80's favorite shopper. So, Rob, I've come to the end here. Do we have any questions?
Yeah, thanks, John. We have a few questions that came in during the presentation. For folks who have additional questions, please feel free to type those into the question box to the right, and we'll get to those. We have plenty of time to answer quite a few questions. I guess the first one is, if I implement a set of modules like Iowa 80, I want my shoppers to touch 2 or 3 different modules so they buy more, but I don't want to pay 2 or 3 times the sale. So what do I do in that situation?
Right. So, we've shown the data in the webinar that says the more times that a shopper interacts with these personalized touch points, the more they are, the more they end up buying. And so we actually want to create situations where shoppers interact with more than one. I mentioned abandonment alerts, retargeting ads, maybe on the site, product recommendations. But at the end of the day, no matter how many touch points the shopper encounters, you still only have one sale. So in the MyBuys scenario, the reporting will show you each one of the touch points that shopper engaged with during that on the way to making that particular purchase. So we'll be able to monitor performance of the touch points and identify areas to potentially expand or potentially improve. So from a reporting standpoint, you want to see each one of the modules that was involved in making the sale. However, from an invoicing standpoint, MyBuys will actually squeeze the overlap out between all the modules so that you have one sale. You may see it reported 3 or 4 times, but you'll pay once for the sale rather than paying once for the touch. And we think that creates a situation where we work harder to increase the number of touches that a shopper has ultimately, because that gets them to buy more, rather than decrease the number of touches because you've got to pay for each touch. So the long and short of it is that in the reporting world, we'll show you everything that was touched, and when it's time to pay, we'll squeeze out the overlap. So you have one sale, you pay one time for it.
All right, thank you, John. The next question is how do you aggregate silo data? So you talk about these multiple channels and this data. Like, can you give us a basic overview of how you aggregate this?
Sure. So in the MyBuys world, our implementation roughly consists of 2 components. It's code on the site to observe behavior, and it's data feeds from the retailer, and we'll match products that will match clicks on a site with product details aggregate or all the way down to SKU level details that a shopper clicks on. And this gives us a very robust picture of the details behind every click that a shopper takes through the site. Every image that they click on is an ad, or every image that they click on through email. And all of this gets recorded by the MyBuys system. So it's actually us that is doing the data aggregation. We're not relying on existing data. We may take other data in, but we're really relying on our ability to monitor behavior in real time, tie that with product information, and then play it back either in real time on the site or through emails or display ads. So ultimately, it falls to us to do that aggregation.
Excellent. Next question is, we don't have much mobile traffic. How do I engage these folks more?
That's an interesting question. And I'll tell you, it's not one that I hear a lot. A lot of times I hear we've got so much mobile traffic and we don't know why we're not getting conversion from it. We see more and more retailers, rather than building separate mobile sites, building sites that employ responsive design, so that regardless of the device the shopper uses, that they have an experience that fits on the screen that they're using. Um, so that would, I think, looking at what the experience is on the mobile site. I'm sorry, looking at what the experience is when the shopper visits your site on the mobile device, and is that something that is conducive to continuing the experience on the mobile device, or does it make them just bounce out? And some of this you will see in your analytics as well. If you see traffic coming in on mobile and leaving immediately, that's an indication that the experience that you're having there um, is not generating subsequent visits or subsequent page views on that mobile device. So I think I would start there and get a better understanding of, is that the people just aren't coming, or are they coming once and that first experience is turning them away?
Okay, thank you. Next is, you talked about the email bucket as being supplementary to the emails we're doing. Will your email program claim credit for sales we would have had anyway?
Oh, yeah, absolutely it will. You bet. It's a marketing, ultimately it's a marketing initiative, right? And so there's, with any marketing initiatives, there's a question of attribution. So absolutely, you will see sales reported through our claim of attribution that you would have had anyway. And our response to that is to say, yes, it happens. We just don't know how much it's going to happen for you. And so out of the gate, during a trial period, let's A/B test. Let's quantify what is being cannibalized, quantify what truly is incremental, and then we'd like to work out a business relationship around just the incremental sale. So ultimately, we don't want to be in the business of stealing sales that you would have had anyway. We want to be in the business of delivering new sales that you would not have had. We know the cannibalization happens, and our answer is, let's test, A/B test, figure out what the incremental is, and build our relationship around that.
Excellent. And the last question we have here is, how often or what frequency of contacts becomes too much before annoying customers? So you talked about in your presentation that up to 3 touch points can give you 5 times more. But when is enough enough?
Yeah, it's there's no hard and fast answer for it. One of the indicators is a change in response rates and click-through rates through the email. Another is the relationship between the ads that are displayed and purchases that are generated as a result of those ads. We have guidelines or rules of thumb that say if I come to the site and put something in my cart and get an abandonment alert, that I then will not be eligible for a shopper alert that week. We have other guidelines that say we don't want to send typically to more than 10 to 15% of your email list at any one time that we send those shopper alerts, and that might result in an individual consumer getting one of those alerts 6 to 8 times a year. So if anything, we want to err on the side of being conservative with the touches, but it's more art at this point than science, and that's one of the things on an ongoing basis that we'll continue to monitor. There's a whole team of people here responsible for optimization, and what we want to find is what is the right point for your customers where we can increase the touch points and hopefully still drive more sales, but yet not start to drop those off because we're annoying the shopper. So it's a bit of an art still, but it's something that we work on with you to figure out what that right threshold is.
Excellent. Hey, John. Well, thank you today for being our guest speaker. We hope that the audience found this webinar not only interesting and informative, but ultimately helpful as you employ your business strategy. If you have additional questions for John, please feel free to contact him directly. Also, be sure to check out our catalog's blog called Catalyst, which can be found at our website under dingley.com. Our goal is to bring you useful information and help you win more business and engage your customers. Have a great day, everyone, and thanks again for attending.
Thanks, everybody.